Here is part 3 of the history of MTWS. Last time I talked about the history of my leagues previously before MTWS, all the diecast leagues and all the online leagues, and now for the big moment. Probably the most important part of the series besides my history of monster trucks. I'm now going to begin talking about the origins of MTWS itself, all the lead up, all the making all the trucks and stuff that would compete that first year, and I'm going to talk about as much of the 2009 season as I can. And all the next videos for next bunch of times out, I'm going to talk about every single year up to 2015, and then we'll see what happens after that. So, here we go. As I left off in part 2, where I was talking about the MTC, the previous league I made before MTWS, by the summer of 2009, like June and July, I stopped doing MTC and I permanently canceled it, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And then during this time, I actually got a little bit more focused into other things, especially Pokemon, as I was looking forward to importing Heart Gold and Soul Silver when they came out in Japan that September. And also during the summer of 2009 is when my hatred for Feld began to bubble up, when I started taking down videos, which I call this day the Purge of 2009. I wonder if anyone that was around YouTube back in 2009 remember those old days. However, after like a month or so, as this was now like early August 2009, I really got back into the urge of making a monster truck league again. But like I said, I decided not to do MTC. I wanted to start all over again from scratch. And this was going to be a completely different league. It was not going to be like Monster Jam, where I'd use the real life trucks or past trucks. Nor was it going to be like MTC, where I would use like the trucks made from the 90s on MTM2 and maybe make some customs afterwards. No. This league, I was going to do all the trucks 100% made by me, and I would 100% make all the tracks. Everything would be done by my hands. But the first problem came up, and that was a name. I couldn't think of a name. Now, of course, since it was a monster truck league, by default, it was going to be MT somewhere in the name, but I could not think of a name. I did not want to do Monster Truck Championship again, so MTC was gone. I wanted to do something more unique. I thought of numerous names, nothing came up, and then eventually I thought about all the sports leagues, the big four in real life in America, the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and then I thought about MLB, and then the World Series came to my head, and I thought, wait a minute, Monster Truck World Series, MTWS. MTWS. Now, believe it or not, at first, I did not like the name. I thought it was too long and sounded way too silly. But I kept it in the back of my head while I thought of other names. But, like, within a few minutes of thinking about it, I just came back to it. And after a few minutes of thinking about it, not liking it, it all of a sudden eventually just became awesome for me. And that is what led to the new league's name. Monster Truck World Series, or as we now call it, MTWS. Now, before I talk about the trucks themselves, I want to talk about something very interesting, and here is the first of many things that none of you are going to know about the history of MTWS until now. Originally, this new league, MTWS, like all my previous leagues, was going to be like a role play at the same time. And it was going to involve me in the league as well, like I said before in the last series. When I drove MTC, I drove Iron Wing in that series. And just like MTC, this series, MTWS, was going to have fictional drivers. And in fact, I actually made all the fictional drivers for the original trucks for MTWS. In fact, funny enough, Fireball's driver was the only female on the group. Kind of interesting to think about that for Fireball's case. For the drivers, I made their names, genders, locations, and their driver personalities, how they would drive the trucks. However, right before the first event, I actually canceled the roleplay aspect of this and got rid of the drivers. However, I still kept the locations for the trucks and their personalities, which were randomly generated. And the trucks' locations would be a feature in MTWS all the way up to 2013 when I finally got rid of them. However, this roleplay aspect would help create the first truck of the league, as the first truck was originally going to be my truck. And as part of the roleplay, I decided to start from humble beginnings. Instead of running on Iron Wing, which I made back in 2007, and then eventually would make into real life in 2009, I decided to make a whole new truck from scratch, literally from the junkyard, funny enough, as I went on an extension of MTM2, which is still around today, Malibu 350's Garage, where on his site he would have things you can download, and one of the part of the site, it had scraps, which were like different things that were like scraps, literally, that were possibly to add on a truck. And he has a section for bodies, and I went looking up the bodies, and I found something that caught my eyes. A old Ford Crown Victoria. I downloaded it, I repainted it black, gave it a little bit of red and blue, and then I finally gave it its name on the side. Shatter. And with that, the first monster truck in MTWS was created. Shatter, the original one. Now, I don't know what the next truck I made was, but I'm quite confident I think it was Power Forward here. Now, I know the third truck was made was Outlaw. Now, the reason why I think Power Forward was second was after I made Shadow, the next bunch of trucks, I made them using some effects on Paint Shop Pro instead of using paint, which is why you see Outlaw in its 2008 paint, which was gray with like green like splotches of green on it, and Power Forward had like different shades of blue all over it, like pixelated, instead of just being one blanket paint on it like it was for Shatter. This paint is also kind of obvious on Predator and Thunderbolt as well. And in another interesting fact of my history of making online trucks, using paint in Paint Shop Pro would be my main office of making paints for monster trucks and tracks all the way up to 2017. And Tester, which I made back in October to November of 2016 for Rigs of Rods, would, I think, be the last truck I ever would paint solely on this method. Twisted Thunder would be the first truck made on Photoshop in December 2016, with Eruption being the first truck in MTWS to get any paint job on it in March of 2017, and of course Daisy Chain would be made in 2017 as well as the first truck made in this method. But here's another interesting history that no one knew about MTWS, and that's Predator. As you see right here, Predator's body in 2009, which it kept till 2013, which was Destroyer's body from 1999, actually was not what Predator was actually supposed to look like. In fact, Predator's original 2009 body was supposed to be Repfan's Blue Thunder 2001. Now, of course, it looks familiar to anyone who knows anything about MTWS, as this is what Patriot's body was from 2012 to 2014. And I actually repainted Blue Thunder into Predator. Unfortunately, I do not have the old files anymore. I even looked on my old Dell, which I still had a whole bunch of old stuff on. It's not there anymore. But basically, it was all black. It was more like a grayish black so you could see it better, with just Predator paint on with simple text on paint, and had the old NFL Carolina Panthers logo, which was used back then in 2009, on the door. Now, what happened was, when I was testing it in the game to make sure everything was working, there was an error with the textures, and the game would not load the truck at all. I spent like a good 2 days trying to figure out what the problem was, and it's not working on any trucks whatsoever, but no matter what, I could not figure out what the problem was. So I said, fuck it, and I went and found Destroyer's 1999 body, and I decided to use that, and add a little bit of red to the truck instead. Funny enough, I also was going to use this body for Seismic Crush, who would appear in MTWS in 2011, and the same problem happened. And then in 2012, when I decided to give Patriot a repaint, I wanted to use that body again. So I downloaded it and repainted from Blue Thunder, and this time it was successful. And it turned out I found out exactly what the problem was back in 2009. See, in MTM2, the paint have to be a certain size. Either 256 by 256 or 64 by 64. No deviation whatsoever. It turned out some, or maybe all, of Predator's paints on that body were not correctly sized. As I put them on Photoshop, I would take them from Photoshop and put them on the paint, but I did not accurately resize paint first before putting the models in, so they were either too small or too big, and because of that, the files could not load on MTM2. Just think if I was able to fix this error from the very start, Predator might have a much different look as it would be today. In fact, Patriot would probably look a lot different too in 2012 to 14, because the only reason I did that body was because I wanted to use that body, which I never got to use yet at that point. Eventually, over the next week, in the middle of August 2009, I finally made enough trucks. I made 12 trucks, and they would be the founding trucks of MTWS. And they are, in no particular order, Crazy, Fireball, Impala, Power Forward, Prowler, Thunderbolt, Destroyer, Flying Falcon, Outlaw, Predator, Shatter, and Wild Ride. After making all the trucks, I then went on to make the schedule for MTWS, which would start, the first event would be in Baltimore, my hometown pretty much at the time, on August 30th, 2009, and I would be doing a show every single Sunday, all the way up to the season finale in Dallas, which was Arlington, but that's what I called it at the time, on December 27th, and it would end with the 2009 championship on February 6th in Los Angeles, California. And unlike MTC and Monster Jam, which I might have mentioned before in a previous episode, but this series was going to be public, and what I mean by public was, I could not do like videos back then. I made videos, I knew how to make videos on MTM2 with Fraps, but I had no way to comprehend how to make an event on MTM2 for YouTube, especially for racing. I had no way to comprehend how am I going to film racing, because I can't film them simultaneously, and I couldn't do online. So instead, what it was just showing the schedule and the point stands at the time. When I made the schedule on August 19th, 2009, the first event was set on August 30th. So I had to wait 11 days before I can do that event. And over the next week, my excitement to do MTWS kept growing and growing and growing as I kept getting impatient for the days to get closer to the 30th. And then finally, it hit a boiling point on the morning of August 26, 2009, when me and my mother went out to Food Lion. As we were pulling into the parking lot, I decided right then and there, and I told her, when we get back home, I'm doing the first MTWS event. She tried to persuade me to try and wait the next 4 days, but I couldn't anymore. I couldn't wait. I had to do it. My excitement was just too damn much. When we got back home, I immediately went to work on the first event. And that was, of course, in the Baltimore Arena in Baltimore. All 12 trucks were competing. And that event would be the first of many pit parties I would do in 2009. I would stop doing them pretty much near the end of the 2009 season, and I would never do another one again until 2013 in London, and since then, 6 years later, I have not done one since. This event, of course, was in the arena because M&T Bank Stadium did not have Monster Jam yet, and the stadium was not made yet, and I had no way to make it, whereas the arena was around, so I decided to compromise. In fact, like the first half of MTWS were in arena shows, and mostly straight line. And almost all of them were tracks that I created by hand. But not the show in Baltimore. But as I said, all 12 trucks competed, and it was straight line racing. When qualifying happened, the racing, of course, was close, and it was the only time ever in MTWS history where the NPC actually competed. Since it was straight line racing, and it was so simple for the computer to do, I actually, literally, raced the computer, which was the only time in MTWS history I did that. And of course the results were all over the place. Sometimes I won, sometimes the NPC won, so it made a fair race. And in the end of qualifying, Fireball would end up being the first ever truck to get the #1 qualifier. Unfortunately for it though, it would lose in the very first race ever in MTWS history to whoever it was. I have no idea who it was. And the bracket continued to shrink, and in the end, in the finals, the first finals ever, we had just 2 trucks remaining. And that was Shatter, the hometown truck, against Impala. They went off the line, and as always, in a straight line race, there was a photo finish. And by just a few hundredths of a second, Shatter won and would be the first ever racing winner in MTWS history. Then came Freestyle, which I forgot to mention the track. It was straight line racing, of course, with racing lanes. It had a bus stack in the middle, and I brought a van stack near one of the tunnels for Freestyle. And to start off Freestyle would be Destroyer, the very first ever freestyler. In the 2009 season, I did 3 judges with a high score possible of 30. And Destroyer would end up going out there, filling the time, and ended up getting a 17, which funny enough would be a trend in MTWS the next 2 season openers, where a truck would come out first and get a 17 to start freestyle. All the trucks did well in freestyle pretty much. Predator in the middle of freestyle cemented its legacy as the reverser king, which stunned the crowd by reversing up the bus stack, which excited the shit out of the crowd and ended up taking the lead, which it lasted for a pretty long time. Shatter, of course, later came out to try and go for the double down and did a pretty good run. However, near the end of it, with like 30 seconds remaining, it hit the backside of the racing lane and got a crooked sky wheelie and ended up going on 2 wheels and flipped into the tunnel, which ended up only getting a 21, preventing the double down. In the end, there was just 2 trucks remaining, and second to last up was Outlaw, who put up an incredible run and finished up with 5 seconds remaining with a wild finish where it went a sideways hit on the bus stack to cross right over to the racing lane, but it failed. It ended up nosediving and flipping rear tires first into the protective area. The crowd was roaring with excitement with that, and Outlaw would take the lead with a 25 with 1 truck remaining. And in fact, I still had the original broken model of Outlaw, as you see right here on my Dell. It didn't have the original paint, however, that was long gone. This is the default paint for it. But this was my first edit job where I showed the damage for trucks, which has been a trend for MTWS ever since. And you see the date, August 27th, 2009, the next day when I made it. I actually still had this on the Dell, and it was very nostalgic to see this, and I am so happy I was able to keep it on here to show it for all you guys forever in history. However, last up would be Crazy, and Crazy lived up to its billing and began its infamy as the Freestyle King. Hit everything out there at full throttle, did an incredible run, including doing the only Cyclones of the night where it had open space to do it. It filled the run, went for a lot more, and ended up finishing the run on top of the bus stack. The crowd, after seeing what Outlaw did, forgot about Outlaw really quickly afterwards and was in awe in what Crazy did. And Crazy would end up winning freestyle with, at the time, the highest scoring run of a 28. And it would be the first of its many freestyle wins and the very first ever freestyle win in MTWS. And then after the event, I actually went and put the track up on mtm2.com for people to download. However, the next day, it was deleted off the site as the person who made most of the arenas at the time, a guy by the name of RMS Titanic, does not allow people using his models or anything for their own custom tracks, so he personally had them deleted off the site, which was very unfortunate. And because of that, I would not upload any tracks of MTWS for the rest of the year except the 2009 championship, which I custom made myself. And that would begin a trend into 2010 where I only would upload the live event tracks except for the 2010 Baltimore track, as it was still in the arena, which was the same one RMS Titanic made, so I couldn't post that up. And then finally in 2011 was when I finally began uploading all the tracks I would make for MTWS, except for some that I could not upload because of. And then another thing about this event was because since I did it sooner instead of on Sunday like it originally was supposed to be, this started an original trend for MTWS where the season opener would be done on the last Wednesday of August, as this first event ever in Baltimore was on a Wednesday. This was a trend I would continue doing all the way up to 2014, and in 2015 I figured it would be better for people, especially since I've had 2 shows, to have it on Sunday instead, so people have a much better time to view it. However, if MTWS ever came back as a series, it would go back to originally the season openers being on the last Wednesday in August. However, in the end, after the event, my mother was right in the end. I should have waited until the 30th, and I felt very guilty and that guilt 10 years later almost still eats me to this day. And I would not have done that now after the fact. As because of that, since I said I was not going to do it again, I'm going to do the next event as scheduled, I was going to have to wait 11 days before the next event, and that hurt so much. But it had a plus to it, which I'm now about to explain. During this 11-day wait between August and September of 2009 before the next event came up, I was so bored out of my mind not being able to do the next event. However, it gave me an idea. After thinking about it over the next few days, I realized that the 2009 championship, which by the way, I still never decided how big the field was going to be, because I never had the idea of having everyone compete, was too small. With 12 trucks, since I'm not going to have everyone compete, what on earth is the field going to be? Even if I did 8 trucks, that would be way too small, and more importantly, that would be 2/3 of the league competing, or 3/4 or whatever. That was not fair. That was way too many trucks competing for the size of the league. And that's when I decided I needed to expand. And then during this 11-day wait, I ended up expanding the league to 4 trucks, as it was now 16 trucks. And those 4 trucks were Crazy Bull, Mad Dog, Patriot, and Eliminator. And then on September 6, 2009, the second ever MTWS event happened in Miami, Florida. Of course, it was still arena. And those 4 new trucks were competing in this event in order for them to catch up with all the other trucks. And in the end, Fireball, believe it or not, got #1 qualifier again, back-to-back weeks, but once again, lost in round 1. Could not get the win despite those #1 qualifyings. And then in freestyle, the rookie in its first event, Mad Dog, would end up winning its first ever freestyle, which would come back with some glory near the end of the year. By now, it was November 2009, and MTWS was now pretty much halfway through its season, as I did a whole bunch of events and crap, and saw some incredible highlights, which unfortunately are so far back into my head, I'm probably not going to be able to easily remember them or explain them here. However, we got into November, and some big changes had to happen with MTWS. First off, the league once again needed to expand, as I still had no idea how big the field for the championship was, and 16 trucks just was not enough, even with 12 competing, which I thought was way too many still with the amount of trucks were already in the league. So, in November 2009, I actually expanded by adding 1 more truck, which would expand the league to 17 trucks, and that new truck was Bling, which I gave its location Houston, as the next show at that time was in Houston. And I believe this might have been the very first MTWS event done in a stadium. Not a arena, an actual stadium, back on November 15th. And in that show, Bling actually, I think, made it to the finals but lost to someone. However, in freestyle, it came out first and actually did a really good run. And in fact, at the end of its run, it went for, at the time, it was the biggest obstacle in MTWS history, which was a bread truck on a hill. It was basically the same setup as this bread truck was that was used in the MTWS Tampa show, as you see in this picture with Badass. The crowd was stunned when it went for it, and when it went for it, it got some big air and got caught by the rear wheels on the top of the truck, and it ended up nosediving and flipping over, kind of like how Bulldozer did in Pontiac 2001, only without all that gigantic air, and it couldn't save it either. The hometown crowd was roaring with excitement after that incredible move, and Bling ended up getting a high score of 24 and ended up finishing 3rd place at the end of the night, but just couldn't get the win. And actually in that event, I actually made a broken version of Bling with the entire bed gone off the truck, and I actually have the original model. However, it was replaced by Bling's updated versions in 2014 when I began replacing them, so unfortunately the model's long gone. I wish I could show it, but I cannot. However, sometime after that, with 17 trucks, once again I still did not think I had enough trucks, and then at this time I finally began getting comfortable with the thought of having 12 trucks in the championship, but I still thought overall 17 trucks with 12 going to the championship was still too big. I need to expand more. And then I did the final expansion of 2009. I added 2 more trucks, which would increase the league to 19 trucks in total. And those new trucks were Aquatic Beast and Crusher. Other big things that happened at this point in 2009 was the emergence of the new and, of course, the arch rivalry of MTWS between Thunderbolt and Impala, as, of course, during this time would begin the streak where they would beat each other in the finals numerous times over consecutive weeks. And this, of course, would be the main rivalry of MTWS that still is around to this day 10 years later. And then later on, near the end of November 2009, I actually expanded MTWS in terms of the public reach by making a brand new site, mtws.weebly.com. This would not only be the site for MTWS, this would basically be my main site, and until 2016 when I made my new current site, Tim Horn's blog. However, this would be the MTWS site, the official one, until I finally shut it down on New Year's Day 2017, as it lasted slightly over 7 years. But on that site, I would begin writing down what happened in the event with the results afterwards, which is something I do on my new site to this day 10 years later. By December 20th, 2009, MTWS was down to its final regular season event, which was going to be in Dallas on December 27th. But during that couple days gap before I did the event, I thought of something I wanted to do. And I decided I was going to do the first ever live event for MTWS in Arlington. And now, of course, back in October 2009, I did my very first MTM2 event, which was B-Day World Finals 1. As I finally had experience now in doing an event filming, I finally felt confident enough I could actually try and do it for MTWS. However, not only did I have no time to make a track and make it test and all to make sure it worked, I wanted a big showcase for MTWS's first ever event. So MTWS in Dallas, the season finale, would be the first track I would ever use that was not made by me. And in fact, it is one of 2 tracks that I never made at all entirely. And the other one was Louisville 2016. But unlike Louisville 2016, Dallas 2009 was the only track I did not edit at all. Louisville 2016, I did some edits to it. This track in Dallas in 2009 had no edits whatsoever. I began filming the event on Christmas Eve, and I actually got done on December 26th. I got done just in time. Now, of course, back then on YouTube's rules, you could only upload videos that are less than 10 minutes long at the time, so I had to split up into smaller pieces. Qualifying, racing, and freestyle split into 4 pieces. But either way, it was a nice showcase to show off MTWS for the audience of the world for the first time ever on December 27th, 2009. And in that event, Predator would beat Destroyer in the finals, and in freestyle, which was at the time the biggest track ever made for MTWS, Destroyer went out first and put up an incredible run and ended up winning with a 24, and it was so excited about winning freestyle, which might have been its first ever freestyle win. It came out for Encore which was the very first encore in MTWS history in the season finale, where it put up an incredible run and at the time put up one of the most violent flips in MTWS history. But at the end of the 2009 season, Crazy would be the first ever points champion with 2,663 points, just edging out Impala by just 1 point for the win. Talk about a close one. After the 2009 season ended, I realized for the 2009 championship, I needed to go very big. After gaining more experience and confidence making tracks, especially after I did B-Day World Finals 1, which was the biggest track I made at the time, I needed to go big for the 2009 championship, and I did as best I could. I, of course, put out a racing lane. I put no center jump out there for freestyle. On one side, I put up a bus stack on the ground, a box van on a hill, a tire ramp, a van stack in near the middle of the racing lanes at the beginning of racing, and on the left side of the track, I made a double, which would have a semi-trailer in it instead for a huge twist, as that was the back double from World Finals 8. Now, of course, looking how it's positioned, if it was realistically done, you could possibly have gotten the backflip off of it, maybe. But of course, backflips were just beginning to happen in Monster Jam with Tom's backflip in World Finals 10, and this would be like a few weeks before Cam McQueen would get the first one competition in Jacksonville. So backflips were not in our minds yet, really. So instead, I conceptualized it as the only way I could have conceptualized it. You go right through it and then eventually up and over for some huge air, which of course would be realized in the 2017 Las Vegas event when I used this obstacle again. It was now February 2010, and I began work on filming the MTWS 2009 Championship, which is the only MTWS Championship event with the name of the league first before the year. And believe it or not, this entire event, I literally filmed in just 2 days. I did qualifying on February 5th, which back then, of course, I would do qualifying the day before the event. And I did all of racing and freestyle and the encore on the 5th into the 6th. And I would upload them immediately as soon as I was finished making them and rendering them. Just thinking back almost 10 years later, I still can't believe how I managed to do that in just 2 days. Especially since during this time in Baltimore, in Maryland, we, along with the Mid-Atlantic region, had 2 blizzards that hit around this time. And me and my friend Trell, who was living with us, we spent like an hour during the time of me filming it, going outside and shoveling our driveway and getting the snow off of our cars. And so the fact that I was able to get that event done with all that is quite an accomplishment that I'll never be able to get again. And of course, that was mainly because the quality was nowhere near as good as it is nowadays. And Outlaw, on the other hand, which would come back to be a very important fact, would end up getting last place in qualifying off a very bad turn, which would come back to bite it as it ended up getting last place. But that did not matter, as in racing, which I had a special bracket for the 12th truck field. I had first round buys, so there would be no fast losers. It would be 8 trucks racing in round 1, with the winners going up against the trucks with the buys into round 2, and it would be an 8 truck bracket for the rest of the way. And Outlaw, despite getting last place in qualifying, shocked everyone, of course, although not really a surprise since it was a really good racer, beat Prowler in round 1, who Prowler, I think, actually won, but of course flipped and got a penalty from the flip, and then stunned everyone by beating Thunderbolt in round 2, and then beat Crazy in the semifinals as Crazy shocked Shatter in round 2. And its opponent would be Crazy Bull, who got here by beating Flying Falcon in round 2 and then Mad Dog in the semifinals. So, the first ever finals in the championship, with the 2009 racing title on the line, was Outlaw and Crazy Bull. They got off the line. It looked like it was going to be an incredible race until Crazy Bull fucked up in the turn and went into the turning car. As a matter of fact, got stuck inside the turn, the turning cars. Meanwhile, Outlaw, who did not have a really good turn, ended up benefiting, crossing the line, and ended up becoming the first ever racing champion in MTWS history. And Crazy Bull would suffer the worst loss in the championship to this day, and it's still humiliating, and Outlaw continues to gloat about it 10 years later. And despite having a little bit better success against Outlaw lately, until Crazy Bull gets a racing win, it's never going to let go of this humiliating loss. And then came Freestyle with the biggest field ever made for MTWS. The trucks were not quite useless as Crazy Bull came out for its humiliating loss and ended up taking the lead pretty early. And then Flying Falcon came out second and surprised everyone by going for the double and just clearing it, and took the lead with a 28. Another big incredible highlight would be Power 4 just 2 trucks later going for the semi-trailer and only got a 26 surprisingly. As that after Power 4 did that, everyone knew if they're going to win, they're going to have to go for the trailer as well, including Predator, who went for it by reversing up it, which was an incredible highlight. Outlaw came out with an incredible freestyle trying to go for the double down and flipped a little bit early, but it got enough points to tie Flying Falcon for the lead with a 28, which still put in contention for the double down. And with 2 trucks remaining, Mad Dog went out and put up the freestyle of his lifetime right there, including going for the tire ramp and landing on the box fan, which stunned everyone. And Mad Dog ended up taking the lead with a 31, which left enough room for the Freestyle King Crazy to go out there, who put up an incredible run too, really was putting himself in contention to beat Mad Dog to get his first freestyle title, but flipped a little bit early, ended up falling 1 point short with a 30 to get its first of 2 runner-ups, and Mad Dog would get its first ever freestyle title, and it still remains its only title to this day. And then Mad Dog would come out to celebrate with the first ever encore in a championship and put up an incredible run, including having a wild flip off the side of the double, as you see right here, to finish it up. And with that, the 2009 season was officially over. And my 15 to 16 year old ass had some of the most fun of my life at the time, and it gave me a lot better experience in editing videos. From B-Day World Finals 1 to the season finale and then the championship, I felt a lot more confident going into 2010 at doing videos, especially involving MTWS. Now, originally, I thought after 2009, I probably would cancel MTWS, as I didn't think I was going to continue on after another year, because I didn't think I really was going to top what I did in 2009. I had no idea how would I do that, but I decided to keep on going forward as I enjoyed the hell out of doing this series, and that series would continue on to this day to celebrate its 10th anniversary. And that will wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing and listening about the history of MTWS's origins, its first ever event, its first ever season, 2009, and next time out, I will be talking about its second season in 2010 when MTWS got its next big expansion. So, see you guys next time for that.